Today in the wood shop, I'm going to build something I've been wanting to build for a while now. A bit of nostalgia. I remember as a youngster seeing carpenters that had long wooden toolboxes they would carry their carpentry tools in to the job site, and I've always wanted to make one. So that's what I'm doing. This is a very simple and easy build you can do in an afternoon. Oh, and I'll give you an update on the turkey from last video too at the end of this one. I'm using up some more of that pine lumber, and I'm ripping down some boards to 5 inches wide for the sides and then some 8 inches wide for the bottom and the ends. Ooh, look, a perfect stick for marking circles. Better save that. The next step is running them through the planer. I set it to approximate, and the first time through the roller's engaged but not the cutter. So I adjust it down and run it again. Still not enough, so a little more down, and there we go. Now a little more down, and that'll be a good first pass on everything. And if you started with 1x lumber from your supplier, you wouldn't need to do this. It's not really for thickness, but the stuff I'm using has a rough sawn side, and I'm taking that down as I want a smooth finish on both sides for this project. So 3 passes for all the pieces, taking very small cuts, gives me a nice smooth surface, and they end up about 11/16 of an inch thick or so, which will be fine. Then to the miter saw to square up one end and measure out for the length of the boards I want for the project. I planed them while they were still long so I could have enough to cut off any snipe from the planer. I want the finished product to be 30 inches long, so I cut the boards for the bottom and sides to that length. I'll end up modifying that a smidge later. I did the old use one board to measure the other for the sides. After I cut those, I want to figure out how much I need for the ends, so I prop up a scrap against the bottom just to kind of get a visual on what would be a good height. I was thinking 13 or 14 inches high. After holding the handle up there and getting a little sense of proportions and giving everything a good look, I settled on 12 inches high for the ends. So I cut 2 pieces 12 inches long. Then I want to taper the ends part way up toward the handle, so I lay out an end board next to a side and look at what would be a good angle. I'm just kind of figuring this out as I go along, so I'm just doing what looks right to me. Then I go ahead and mark one side, then try to mirror that on the other side. Once marked, I take it over to the miter saw and just swing the saw over and try to line up the edge of the throat plate with the line. Then I pull the saw down and put the edge of a tooth on the line out at the end and then in as far as it'll go. I was pretty close, so my micrometer was calibrated okay that day. I ended up at 27.5 degrees or so, I believe. Then I was just about ready to cut it and thought, well, I might as well cut both at the same time, so I went and got the other end piece. Then put them together and lined them all up, and before making the cut, I put a pencil mark on the bed and the fence to line up for the next cut. Good thing, too, since in order to cut the other side without switching the saw over, I need to flip them upside down and won't have the mark on the board to go by. So trusting the mark that I just made on the saw bed and the fence, I made the second cut. And there are the ends. Then I want to do a general fit up to see how all the parts look together, and that's all I'm doing here. You'll notice that I cut the pieces to go together this way with the sides against the edges of the bottom and the ends sitting on top of the bottom. I end up and change that later, but there's the general shape of it anyway, plus the handle. I'm using a 1-inch dowel for the carry handle, so now I got to figure out where to put it. So a little test look at it and a couple of quick measurements, and I figure about 1 inch down from the top to the top of the dowel looks about right. So that's 1.5 inches to the center point for the dowel hole. I get that all measured, centered, and marked up, and then head over to the drill press. Before I commit to drilling out the ends, though, I grab a piece I cut off the ends from out of the scrap bucket to drill a test hole. Seems to fit about right. Snug, but not too snug. Wonder what I could use that for. Should I save it? Well, moving on. With the test hole satisfactory, I set up to drill both ends all in one operation. I've got them clamped together with one clamp, and then I get all lined up, put the other clamp on, clamping them to the table as well. And as you can see, putting the camera tripod on the bench that's holding the vibrating tool is not the best idea. Sorry for the motion sickness. I'm still not very good at this. Job done though. 2 ends, 2 holes. Then of course there's the inevitable sanding. The plain sides were pretty good, so just a quick touch on those was all that was needed. The other sides needed more attention though, mostly for cleanup. They had lumberyard marks on them, smudges and marks and such, so it took a little extra sanding to clean that up. Now I'm ready to put this thing together, so I grab my piece of wax paper for easy glue squeeze out cleanup and get started laying it out, picking out which sides I want showing. You'll notice here I absent-mindedly start laying it out with the ends butted up to the edges of the bottom instead of the way I had it before, with them sitting on top of the bottom board. Then when I put the side up against it, I remembered, oh yeah, those go on top. But that got me thinking about it, and I started second-guessing myself and how I wanted to do it. I put it together dry and looked at it and pondered which way would look the best. Pondering and head-scratching seems to be the norm for me with these projects I just sort of build as I go along. Anyway, I finally decided that I would just have the sides and the ends butt up to the edges of the bottom all the same, which meant I had to cut the bottom length down by the thickness of both ends. So after that, it and the inside dimension ended up to be 28 5/8 inches long. Then I wanted another look, so after playing falling dominoes with the sides and ends for a minute, I saw enough to figure out that it was good to go. So all set up here to start the assembly. I've got a couple of long quick clamps, some Titebond 3, just because I'm not totally sure on the end use of this thing yet, and some screws and tools off to the side. I start out putting some glue on the end grain of the bottom to get that soaking into the end grain some, because it likes to soak it up. Then I put some on the mating pieces and line it all up nicely and clamp it temporarily so I can get a screw into each end. I gently pull it down to the edge of the bench so I can get my drill lined up straight and drill the pilot holes and countersink for the screws. I'm using 1.5 inch construction screws. Back in the day, they probably just used nails to make these, but I like screws. I put one in the center of each end, then took off each clamp, replacing it with screws as I went, so a total of 3 screws in each end. And speaking of back in the day when these were commonly used, I don't think there were any what you might call standard versions of this. I think every carpenter just made his own to whatever size and type he wanted, which is good because even though I'm giving you the dimensions of the one I'm making, You can make yours whatever size and type you want, and you're still holding with tradition. With the ends securely fastened, I get ready to do the sides and give a quick measurement check to make sure the tops of the ends are the same distance as the bottoms. And it looks nice and square and good, so I move on with the sides. Pretty straightforward on those, glue and screws. And I put 2 screws in the ends and then 2 along the bottom, so total of 6 screws on each side. The final step is the carry handle, and I used a 1-inch dowel that I just had hanging around the shop. I cut it down to be longer than the box, so it would protrude about 3/8 of an inch or so on each end. I thought that'd look a little nicer than just making it flush. I used the belt sander to put a little chamfer on the ends. This dowel's been hanging around so long, though, it has a slight bow in it. So I get it in and give it a look and mark what I want to be the top. So after getting some glue on it, I'm going to turn it in to spread the glue, but also line it up so the bow is down. So that way, if there's any bend to it when carrying it with weight in it, it'll bend to straight. After a little glue cleanup, it looks pretty done. Just needs a final sanding to knock the sharp corners and edges off. And I decided to kind of give the sharp corners on the tops of the ends a round over for a bit of a softer look. And there it is finished. Well, except for an actual finish on the wood. Not sure if I'll stain and clear coat or just clear coat. I think it holds true to the old time versions I've seen from the past. And if you're thinking, hey, I'm not a carpenter, I don't really need one of these, there are other uses for them. I'll probably use mine to store stuff I use to build structures, but not so much for woodworking, like chalk lines and pry bars and things like that. But you could also put one of these out on the porch as a decoration with some potted plants or flowers in it, or use it if you're a gardener to bring in the day's bounty from the garden. Stage them upright, and you might even be able to sell these online or at craft shows. This was a fun project for me that kind of took me back to the past a bit. And now it's time for the turkey update. So, I promised you guys an update on the turkey situation, so here's what I did. I did a combination of paint and stain. I did Minwax Golden Pecan stain on the feathers and the front of the body there. I did some acrylic craft paint thinned down, so kind of like using it as a stain for the snood, the beak, and the head. Drew eyes on there with a Sharpie. I did burn the accents on the feathers and left the tips natural, because that's kind of the way wild turkey feathers look. So, I don't know. What do you think? Better or worse? Did I ruin it? Let me know. See you.